The afternoon sun, long and weary, stretched through the grimy window, bathing the cramped attic room in a sickly yellow light. Ilara, 15 years old, huddled on the worn single bed, her sapphire eyes fixed on the peeling wall. The pervasive scent of dampness and stale cigarettes clung to every fiber of fabric, every corner of the room, a constant reminder of the suffocating life she endured. Since her biological parents perished in a tragic accident 3 years prior, Ilara had been thrust into the care of the foster family, a middle-aged couple in rural Pennsylvania who saw her more as a burden than a family member. Mrs. Mildred, with her perpetually scowling face and cold eyes, frequently delivered cutting remarks about Ilara's presence. Mr. Arthur, seemingly kind on the surface, concealed a more terrifying darkness. His furtive glances, accidental touches, and the whispered, ominous words at night transformed the already frigid house into a prison of fear. Ilara's young heart constricted whenever Mr. Arthur was near, an invisible terror seeping into her every sleep, every breath. Tonight, that fear was more palpable than ever. After a cold dinner of leftovers and heavy silence, Mr. Arthur lingered after Mrs. Mildred had gone to bed. His eyes were fixed on Ilara, a grotesque smirk on his face. "Ilara," he rasped, "you seem a little sad. Let Daddy Arthur comfort you a bit, shall we?" Ilara's throat went dry, her heart pounding as if trying to escape her chest. She recoiled, her trembling hands clutching the edge of the chair. Her entire body screamed in protest. She couldn't bear it any longer. A wave of despair surged, mixed with indignation and a desperate yearning for freedom. She had to go. Immediately. As Mr. Arthur drew closer, Ilara felt an electric jolt. She sprang up, bolted for the door, not daring to look back. Mr. Arthur's hoarse shouts echoed behind her, but Ilara heard nothing but the whistling wind in her ears and the frantic drumming of her own heart. She ran like the wind through the deserted village road, past desolate fields, with only the faint moonlight to guide her. The only destination in her mind was the dense forest in the distance, the place where she always found peace during her afternoon escapes. The white birch forest stretched endlessly, like a silent giant guarding nature's secrets. Tall birch trees reached skyward, their branches interlacing to form a dark canopy. Ilara plunged into the darkness, thorns and branches whipping at her limbs, but she felt no pain. Fear had calloused all other sensations. She ran and ran until her lungs burned and her legs ached. The forest grew wilder, the moonlight struggling to penetrate the thick foliage. Ilara stumbled repeatedly, her vision blurred by tears and exhaustion. She didn't know how far she had gone, only that she needed to get far away from that house, from those haunting memories. Suddenly, a sharp pain pierced her foot. Ilara collapsed, a choked cry escaping her throat. Her foot was caught in something hard and sharp. In the dim light, she saw a steel wire wrapped tightly around her ankle, constricting it to numbness. An animal trap. A new horror overwhelmed her, stronger than the initial fear. She struggled, trying to pull her foot free, but the wire tightened, cutting deeper into her skin. Blood began to seep out, soaking her thin sock. Her strength drained, pain spreading through her body, and despair engulfed Ilara in darkness. She faded, images of her loving parents flashing before her, then vanishing into the cold night of the forest. Not far away, deep within the vast white birch forest, nestled amidst ancient trees, stood a modern house, yet harmoniously integrated with nature. Built of stone and wood, it featured large glass windows overlooking a lush green garden and a shimmering pool beneath the moonlight. This was the home of Elias Thorne, a talented landscape architect and owner of thousands of acres of surrounding forest land. Elias, 27, with dark brown hair, deep blue eyes, and a sturdy physique, had left the bustling city life to find peace in the wild. He lived a simple yet fulfilling life, dedicating his time to his work, tending his land, and companionship with his German shepherd, Bear. That evening, Bear suddenly became unusually restless. The large dog barked incessantly, scratched at the door, and pawed at Elias's legs. His ears perked, listening for something only he could perceive. Elias put down the book he was reading, frowning at his beloved dog. "What's wrong, my friend?" he asked, stroking Bear's thick fur. "It seems something is bothering you." Bear continued to bark, his barks not the usual playful yips of a small animal, but an urgent call, as if something critical was happening. Elias rose and went to the door. He was sensitive to even the slightest changes in his forest. He knew every trail, every sound of the wildlife. Bear's barking tonight had an unusual quality, a deep anxiety he had never heard before. He quickly pulled on a thick jacket, grabbed his flashlight and Bear's leash. "All right, Bear, let's go see what's up." They crossed the garden, Elias's footsteps rustling dry leaves. Bear ran ahead, sniffing the air, occasionally stopping and whining. The light from Elias's flashlight illuminated the tree trunks, creating long, eerie shadows. They delved deeper into the forest, reaching an area Elias knew some local hunters occasionally set illegal traps, despite his repeated warnings. Suddenly, Bear stopped abruptly, standing rigid, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Elias shined his flashlight in the direction the dog was looking, and then he saw it. A small figure lay motionless at the base of an ancient tree, a steel wire gleaming under the light, caught around the person's leg. Elias's heart clenched. A human, and seemingly a young girl. He rushed forward, Bear close behind. The girl lay face down, her tangled brown hair obscuring her face. Her thin jacket wasn't enough to protect her from the cold forest night. Elias gently turned her over, the flashlight beam illuminating her pale face, purple lips, and the blood seeping onto her ankle. "Oh my God," he muttered. She looked very young, perhaps only 15. Elias quickly checked her pulse. It was faint, but steady. She was still alive. He immediately pulled a small knife from his pocket, carefully cutting the steel wire that was constricting her leg. The wound was deep and bruised, but fortunately not too severe. He removed his jacket and gently covered her to keep her warm. "Good boy, Bear," Elias told his dog, then carefully lifted the girl. She was light in his arms, like a withered branch. He began to walk, weaving through the dense trees, back to his home. Tonight, the forest had brought him a small creature, a lost soul, in need of shelter and healing. Elias gently laid Alara on the soft sofa in his cozy living room. The fire crackled in the stone fireplace, dispelling the cold and dampness from outside. He quickly retrieved the first aid kit, poured warm water into a basin, and began to clean the wound on her leg. His every touch was incredibly careful, afraid of hurting her. Bear curled up at the foot of the sofa, his dark eyes fixed on the strange girl, as if on guard. While tending to her wound, Elias observed Alara. Her face still held traces of fear and exhaustion, but in her deep sleep, she looked so peaceful, like a sleeping angel. He wondered what had caused a girl this age to wander alone in the deep forest at night, let alone get caught in an animal trap. It certainly wasn't a mere coincidence. After bandaging the wound, Elias brewed a warm cup of tea with honey and ginger. He knew her body was very cold and needed to be warmed from within. He gently placed the tea beside her and draped an extra thick wool blanket over her. Throughout that night, Elias stayed awake, sitting beside Alara, listening to her every breath. He felt the fragility and weakness emanating from her. Something compelled him to protect this girl, to provide her with the safety she seemed to have lost. Dawn broke, the morning light filtering through the leaves and into the room. Elias dozed for a moment in the armchair, but a small sound from the sofa woke him. Alara was awake, her sapphire eyes opened wide, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling. Then her gaze swept across the room, stopping at Elias, then at Bear, who was nudging her hand. Panic suddenly flashed in her eyes. She recoiled, trying to sink deeper into the sofa. "Good morning," Elias said gently, his voice warm and reassuring. "Are you all right? You're at my house. I found you in the forest and brought you here." Alara stared at him, saying nothing. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. Perhaps she was still too frightened to speak. "You were caught in a trap," Elias continued, "but I've removed it. Your wound has been bandaged. You can drink some of this tea to warm up." He offered her the cup of tea. Alara hesitantly reached out, her trembling fingers touching the warm ceramic cup. The fragrant scent of tea made her feel a little more at ease. She took a small sip, the warmth spreading through her body. "What's your name?" Elias asked, his tone still gentle. Alara swallowed, her throat dry. "Alara," she whispered, her voice as faint as a breeze. "Hello, Alara. I'm Elias, and this is Bear," he said, nodding toward the dog, who wagged his tail gently. Alara looked at the dog, a faint spark flickering in her eyes. Bear nudged her hand with his nose, then licked it gently. Alara flinched slightly, but then slowly stroked the dog's head. The action seemed to bring her a little comfort. Elias sat down on the opposite chair, maintaining a respectful distance so she wouldn't feel threatened. "Alara, can you tell me what happened? Why were you alone in the forest at night?" Alara lowered her head, her hair hiding her face. After a long moment, she spoke, her voice broken and choked. I ran away." "Ran away?" Elias asked softly. "From where?" Alara hesitated. Then the painful story slowly spilled from her lips, about her life with the Foster family, Mrs. Mildred's coldness, and the horror of Mr. Arthur's touches, when she described Mr. Arthur's attempt to molest her. Alara's voice broke into sobs. Elias listened in silence, his face darkening. Anger flared within him, but he tried to remain calm. He understood that she needed reassurance and safety more than judgment. When Alara finished her story, Elias gently stood up, went to her side, and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Alara," he said, his voice firm, "you've come to the right place. You'll be safe here. No one can hurt you anymore." Those words were like a sedative, soothing the fear in Alara's heart. She looked up at him, her eyes glistening with tears, but less panicked. In Elias's gaze, she saw sincerity and a promise of peace. It was something she had longed for a very long time. The following days were a slow but steady healing process for Alara. Elias never pressured her. He let her freely explore the house and the forest at her own pace. He prepared healthy, fresh meals from the vegetables in his garden and naturally raised meats. The aroma of freshly baked bread, hot soup, and sweet desserts gradually filled the emptiness in Alara's stomach and heart. Elias's house was a perfect sanctuary. The cool stone walls in summer, the large glass windows allowing natural light to flood every room. From the modern kitchen, with its warm oak counter and pristine white cabinets, where Elias often cooked, Ilara could look out at the lush green forest. Every morning, sunlight streamed through the leaves, creating shimmering streaks on the wooden floor. It was a vibrant painting, completely different from the dark, stifling attic room she had once lived in. Elias spent time taking Ilara on walks around his property. He showed her secret trails, wild flowers blooming in every color, and ancient trees he had planted as a child. Ilara learned to identify the calls of different birds, to distinguish edible from poisonous mushrooms, and to listen to the whispers of the wind through the leaves. She realized that the forest was not just a hiding place, but a living world, full of mystery and beauty. One of Ilara's favorite activities was sitting by the pool in the afternoons. The clear, cool water reflected the pristine sky. Elias often taught her to swim, patiently guiding her through each stroke. Gradually, Ilara's initial fear dissolved, replaced by a sense of freedom and exhilaration as her body relaxed in the water. Bear also became Ilara's indispensable companion. The large, but gentle and loyal dog was always by her side, like a silent guardian. Ilara often stroked Bear's soft fur, whispering stories she couldn't tell anyone else. Bear's presence gave her a feeling of unconditional love. Elias also noticed Ilara's positive change. Smiles appeared more frequently on her face. Her sapphire eyes no longer held sadness, but instead the light of curiosity and joy. He often told her about his work, how he designed gardens, how he worked with nature to create harmonious and sustainable living spaces. Ilara listened intently, his stories opening up a new world of color and meaning. One day, as they sat together on the porch, watching the fiery sunset descend beyond the horizon, Ilara unexpectedly asked, "Uncle Elias, why are you so kind to me?" Elias smiled, his gaze distant, looking towards the rolling hills. "Every human being deserves to be loved and to live in safety, Ilara. You are a brave girl, and I'm just doing what anyone should do when they see someone in need." Ilara said nothing, but a warm feeling swelled in her heart. For the first time in her life, she felt she belonged, that she was cherished. However, the ghosts of the past still occasionally resurfaced. Nightmares of Mr. Arthur haunted Ilara in her sleep. Sometimes she would wake up startled, drenched in sweat, her heart pounding. Elias was always there. He would sit by her bed, tell gentle stories about the forest, sing simple lullabies, until Ilara calmed down and fell asleep again. He never showed annoyance or fatigue, always patient and understanding. Elias also contacted the authorities to report Ilara's situation and what had happened to her. He knew it would be a long and complex process, but he was determined to protect Ilara at all costs. He also sought help from a therapist in the nearby town, who visited Ilara several times to help her overcome her psychological trauma. Gradually, Ilara learned to trust Elias, not only as a protector, but also as a friend, a brother, a family member. Elias not only cared for her physically, but also healed her soul. He taught her about the beauty of nature, the resilience of life, and the meaning of love. Elias's house was not just a house. It had become a home where Ilara found peace and began her life anew. And as he watched Ilara play with Bear on the green lawn, or as she absorbed herself in a book under the shade of a tree, Elias knew his decision was right. The white birch forest had brought him a miracle, a small heart in need of warmth and healing, and he would do everything to protect that miracle. Each day spent at the stone house in the white birch forest was a new step in Ilara's healing journey. Under Elias's tender care, she gradually regained her physical and mental health. The wound on her ankle had healed, leaving only a faint scar as a mark of the past. But the scar in her soul, though invisible, needed more time to close. Elias wasn't a man of many words, but every word he spoke carried sincerity and understanding. He never forced Ilara to recount or confront painful memories. Instead, he created a safe space where she could freely express her emotions. When Ilara cried, he would sit silently beside her, offering a tissue and a warm glass of water. When she laughed, he would return her smile, his eyes filled with encouragement. One of Ilara's favorite activities was helping Elias tend the garden. Elias had a vast garden, not only growing vegetables, but also a variety of wildflowers and medicinal herbs. Every morning, the two of them would go to the garden together, weeding, watering, and harvesting the freshest produce. Elias patiently showed Ilara how to distinguish each type of plant, how to care for them, and how to recognize the signs of the soil. Once, while weeding around a row of tomato plants, Ilara suddenly asked, "Uncle Elias, why do you like gardening so much?" Elias smiled, his hands covered in soil. "Because gardening teaches me many things, Ilara. It teaches me about patience, about the cycle of life. Every tiny seed has the potential to become a big, fruit-bearing plant. Just like people, you also have the potential to grow, to overcome all difficulties, and become stronger." Ilara looked at the thriving tomato plants, the small tomatoes just beginning to turn red. She felt a strange connection to those seeds. She, too, had once been a small seed, buried in the mud, but now she was being nurtured in an environment full of light and love. In the afternoons, they often prepared dinner together. Elias's kitchen was a beautiful space, with pristine white kitchen cabinets combined with warm oak countertops. The afternoon sun filtered through the large window, illuminating the wooden cutting boards fragrant with food. Elias taught Ilara how to make bread, how to cook mushroom soup from the mushrooms he foraged in the forest, and how to make fresh salads from the garden greens. Ilara, initially clumsy, gradually became more skillful. The dishes she made herself had a special flavor of effort and love. One evening, as they were eating dinner by candlelight, Elias looked at Ilara and asked, "Ilara, have you thought about going back to school?" Ilara looked up, a little surprised. She had dropped out of school a long time ago, and the thought of returning made her a little anxious. I don't know. I'm scared." "It's okay," Elias said, his voice reassuring. "I won't force you, but I think learning will help you gain more knowledge, and more importantly, you'll meet new friends, people who can share with you." He knew that reintegrating into society was an important part of the healing process. After many nights of contemplation, Ilara decided to try. Elias helped her contact a small school in the nearby town that had a special education program for students with difficult circumstances. On her first day of school, Ilara was still shy, her eyes still showing anxiety. But when she met the principal, a kind woman with a warm smile, and her friendly new classmates, her fear gradually faded. Elias often drove Ilara to and from school every day. On the way, they would talk about what happened at school, about what Ilara learned, and about her dreams. Elias always listened attentively, occasionally offering sincere advice. Gradually, Ilara not only learned knowledge from books, but also learned to trust herself, to open up to those around her. She began to paint pictures of the forest, of Elias's house, of Bear, and of the wild flowers she had seen. Her paintings were full of color and life. as if it was her way of expressing her soul. Elias and Ilara's peaceful life was interrupted when a letter arrived from the court. The foster family had filed a missing person report for Ilara and demanded her return. Although Elias had reported the incident to the police and Child Protective Services, the legal process was still very complicated. Elias hired an excellent lawyer, a middle-aged woman named Sarah. Known for her dedication and experience in child-related cases, Sarah met with Ilara many times, listening to her story with deep empathy. She also gathered evidence from the foster family's former neighbors and police reports about suspicious incidents around their house. The trial took place in a small courthouse in town. Ilara had to face her biggest fear, confronting Mr. Arthur and Mrs. Mildred. Elias was always by her side, holding her hand tightly, his eyes encouraging and reassuring. Bear was also allowed in the waiting room, lying quietly at Ilara's feet, like an invisible protective shield. Mr. Arthur and Mrs. Mildred appeared with hypocritical expressions, trying to portray themselves as pitiful parents whose adopted child had run away. They told false stories about Ilara, attempting to tarnish her reputation. Ilara felt her heart clench, but when she saw Elias's steadfast gaze and Sarah's encouraging smile, she regained her courage. When it was her turn, Ilara took a deep breath. She recounted the entire truth, her voice initially trembling, but then becoming clearer and stronger. She spoke of the harsh words, the neglect, and the terrifying night she had to flee. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she did not falter. Sarah presented compelling evidence, including medical reports of Ilara's injuries and testimonies from other witnesses. Elias also testified, recounting how he found Ilara and her pitiable condition. Finally, the court's verdict was delivered. The foster family was stripped of their guardianship over Ilara. Mr. Arthur would be further investigated for child abuse. As for Ilara, the court decided to grant temporary guardianship to Elias, provided he could demonstrate his ability to fully care for and nurture her. Leaving the courthouse, Ilara felt as if a 1,000-pound weight had been lifted. She ran to hug Elias tightly, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "Thank you, Elias. Thank you so much." Elias held her close, his brown hair gently touching Ilara's hair. "It's nothing, Ilara. You deserve a better life." After the trial, Elias and Ilara's lives became more stable. Elias officially became Ilara's legal guardian, which brought both of them peace of mind and a sense of true family. Ilara continued to attend school, and she integrated better and better. She made more friends, participated in school extracurricular activities, and even won an award in a school art competition. Ilara's paintings always bore the strong imprint of nature, with bright colors and vibrant images. Every afternoon, when Elias picked Ilara up from school, they often went to the local farmers market. The market bustled with friendly farmers, and fresh produce displayed everywhere. Ilara enjoyed looking at the colorful stalls, learning how to choose the freshest vegetables and fruits, and chatting with the friendly vendors. These market trips were not just simple shopping trips, but also warm family moments where Ilara felt she was part of a community. On weekend evenings, Elias's house often hosted special guests, his close friends who had known him for a long time and always supported him in everything. They were farmers, artists, and teachers from the town who lived simple but meaningful lives. They often gathered around the fireplace, telling each other stories about life, work, and dreams. Ilara was initially hesitant, but gradually she felt more comfortable being around them. They treated her like a family member. No one was curious or judgmental about her past. One of Elias's best friends was Old Man Arthur, an elderly farmer with a long white beard and a kind smile. Old Man Arthur often brought fairy tales about the forest, about mythical creatures, and about ancient legends. Elara listened intently. Old Man Arthur's stories, taking her into a world full of magic and adventure. Elias also continued his landscape architecture work. He often took Elara with him to the projects he was designing, explaining the work process to her, how he combined his knowledge of nature and architecture to create beautiful and sustainable living spaces. Elara, with the keen eye of an artist, often offered insightful comments and creative ideas that surprised Elias. On a spring morning, when pink rhododendrons bloomed throughout the forest, Elara and Elias decided to hike to the nearby mountain peak. The view from the summit was breathtaking. Endless green valleys covered with dense forests and winding rivers. Elara took a deep breath, feeling the fresh air fill her lungs. She looked into the distance, where the overlapping mountain ranges blended into the clear blue sky. In that moment, she felt a profound peace she had never experienced before. The pain of the past seemed to have receded, replaced by a bright and promising future. "Uncle Elias," Elara said, her voice full of emotion. "I don't know what to say to thank you. You've given me a new life." Elias turned to look at her, his eyes filled with tenderness. He gently stroked Elara's hair. "There's no need to thank me, Elara. You've given me more than you think. You've brought light and laughter to this house." In that moment, Elara realized that Elias was not only the one who saved her from danger, not only the one who cared for her, but he was also her family, a family not by blood, but by love and understanding. Time passed, and Elara matured every day. She was no longer the frail, frightened 15-year-old girl she once was. Now, at 18, Elara was a beautiful, strong, and confident young woman. She had completed high school with excellent grades and received a scholarship to a prestigious art university. The decision to leave to pursue her dreams was not easy for Elara. Elias's home, the white birch forest, and even Bear had become an indispensable part of her life. But Elias always encouraged her to follow her passions. "You have a special talent, Elara," Elias told her one evening as they sat together on the porch, gazing at the twinkling stars. "Let that talent shine. I'll always be here, and you'll always have a home to return to." Elara hugged Elias tightly, tears streaming down her face. She knew that no matter where she went or what she did, her heart would always turn to this place, to the man who gave her a second life. At university, Elara continued to develop her artistic talent. Her paintings, especially those of nature and rural life, quickly attracted the attention of professors and friends. She combined traditional painting techniques with deep emotions about nature, creating unique and impressive works. Whenever she had free time, Elara would return to the house in the white birch forest. These returns were always filled with joy and warmth. Elias would meet her at the gate, Bear would rush into her arms, and in the evenings, they would sit together by the fireplace, telling each other stories about what had happened in their lives. Elara also frequently helped Elias with his landscape architecture projects. With her knowledge of art and sensitivity to space, she contributed many unique ideas, helping Elias's designs become more vibrant and soulful. Their relationship was not just guardian and ward, but also collaborators, soulmates, and a true family. One day, After Ilara had graduated from university and become a successful artist, she decided to hold her first art exhibition. The exhibition was titled Breath of the Green Forest, with all the works inspired by the white birch forest and Elias's home. On the opening day of the exhibition, Elias and his close friends from town came to support Ilara. Elias stood amidst the crowd, his eyes glowing with pride as he watched Ilara confidently present her works. She was now a mature woman, beautiful and full of energy. When the exhibition ended, Elias came to Ilara and hugged her tightly. "I'm very proud of you, Ilara. You've come a long way." Ilara smiled, her eyes radiant. "It's all thanks to you, Elias. You gave me the chance to live, to dream, and to be myself." Many years passed, and Ilara continued to develop her career, becoming a respected artist with works that bore her unique style. She still kept in regular contact with Elias and frequently returned to the house in White Birch. Each time she returned, she felt the peace and unconditional love from Elias. However, time also brought changes. Elias grew older, his hair now streaked with gray, but his eyes still shone with gentleness and wisdom. Ilara realized that Elias was not only the one who saved her life, but he was also a flesh and blood part of her soul. One day, as Ilara sat beside Elias on the porch swing, looking out at the familiar forest, she suddenly recognized a feeling deeper than familial affection. It was an unspoken love, a bond that transcended all boundaries. Elias had not just been her guardian. He had become the most important man in her life. Ilara knew that Elias also shared similar feelings. He always showed her special care, a gentle look he reserved for no one else. He had sacrificed so much to nurture and protect her, never asking for anything in return. One drizzly afternoon, as they sat together by the fireplace, Elias reading a book and Ilara drawing, Ilara suddenly put down her pencil. "Uncle Elias," she said, her voice slightly trembling. Elias closed his book and looked at her. "What is it, Ilara?" Ilara took a deep breath. I love you, Elias. Not the love of a daughter for a father, but the love of a woman." Elias looked at her, his eyes wide with surprise. After a long moment, he finally spoke, his voice warm and deeply moved. "Ilara, I love you too. I've loved you for a very long time." In that moment, time seemed to stand still. Two hearts, once so wounded, now became one. It was a love that transcended all barriers, a love built on understanding, sacrifice, and healing. They took their time to understand each other's feelings, to build a strong foundation for their relationship. They knew the road ahead might not be easy, but they were ready to face all challenges together. Many years later, Ilara and Elias lived happily together in the house in the White Birch Forest. The house remained the same, warm and peaceful, but now it was filled with the laughter and love of a complete family. Elias continued his landscape architecture work, and Ilara still dedicated her time to art. She opened a small gallery in town, where she displayed her works and held drawing classes for children. Their lives were a symphony of peace and happiness. They cared for the garden together, cooked delicious meals together, walked in the forest together, and admired the rhododendrons blooming in spring. Bear, though old and frail, was always by their side, a loyal friend and an indispensable member of the family. Occasionally, they still remembered the past, the difficulties Ilara had endured. But now, those memories no longer carried pain. Instead, they were a reminder of the power of resilience and love. The story of Ilara and Elias became a legend in that land. People told of the orphaned girl who was mistreated, rescued by a kind man, and eventually found love and happiness with the smiles of young children. The white birch forest still stood tall, its ancient trees reaching skyward, sheltering the small house. Whenever Alara looked out the window, she saw the lush green foliage, the vibrant wildflowers, and the sparkling sunbeams piercing through the leaves. It was the breath of peace, the breath of love, and the breath of a new life she had found in Elias's embrace and in the heart of the green forest.